Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode.
Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. Today, it's just Betsy and I, and we are going to talk about a topic that we have done an episode on before called perfectionism. One of our favorite topics, maybe too.
I don't know if it's our favorite topic, but we think we've
certainly talked about it on
important.
Important, and also probably a topic we're going to be addressing in our upcoming course.
Absolutely. So we're starting a 4-week course. We really hope many of you join us. It's all about rewilding. So if you've been a listener or even just a new listener, we're going to dive into sort of the key lessons that we've pulled from being so engaged with the wild woman archetype in these last 4 years of doing this podcast. And we're pretty excited to, we're also working on a book. And so a lot of what we're sharing in the course is sort of what we've been writing and thinking about. So, and one of the pieces is how perfectionism definitely can be at odds with allowing this wildish, more natural essence to come forward in us.
Yeah. I think a lot about performance and how we seek approval in our performance, starting at a pretty young age when we get accolades for things. And we think, okay, this is what success is. It's when I perform and people tell me I'm doing a good job and I'm
get a blue ribbon and get a sticker on my sheet. And
yeah. So it does start young, but let's talk about, because I think one of the interesting things we've learned is there may be a kind of a genetic component as well. And so let's define it, I guess, to start.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's really important as a psychologist to say that it is not a disorder. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in the diagnostic manual of the DSM about perfectionism. And I would also say that it's not necessarily something we need to do away with. So if you are a perfectionist, you and I have often called ourselves recovering perfectionist, but we were talking, I definitely have changed my tune on that after reading and researching perfectionism, because there are certainly adaptive forms of perfectionism. But sort of the classic definition is that you are striving for excellence and you have high motivation to do things perfectly. So there's these excessively high standards that you're always holding yourself to. And then the really key piece, which this is the part that can become non-adaptive, is that you are always sort of critically evaluating yourself. Mm-hmm. So there can be a definite sort of self-flagellation or being extra hard on yourself when something isn't perfect. So that's clearly the part of perfectionism. It's not as much striving for excellence. That's not really necessarily problematic. It's the beating self up when you don't meet the standard that you believe you should.
Yeah. And that inner critic, we've talked about that before, can live in us in different voices, different narrators that are in our head, and kind of when those messages come through from our inner critic, that can almost impede, it does impede really our ability to move forward in life or to take chances or risks, or when we don't have it perfect. And so I think the inner critic is a big piece of where perfectionism is a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what we've learned is that it is genetic. Just about 30 to 40% of perfectionism. They've done twin studies on this. And so, there is, you can look to your parents, right? Mm-hmm. You have a perfectionistic parent, but 30 to 40% doesn't give you the whole story. So of course there are environmental things and cultural things and things we've learned in families and educational systems that impact us. But with sort of the right confluence of factors, Yeah, people can really end up being very particular about their ideals and this deep, deep drive to have to attain it.
Yeah. When you think about at what age do you think you recognize that perfectionism was something that maybe you had
Well, of course, I
challenges
didn't recognize it because I was a kid, but I have stories from my parents that I was a good student and I would bring my spelling list home and I would go into the living room and I would say, Dad, would you give me the spelling list? And he would give it to me and I would get it all perfect. And then we'd go into the kitchen and I would say, Mom, will you give me my spelling list? And so it was sort of like I couldn't rest or I couldn't, it was sort of like there was a fear about, but what if next time I don't remember how to spell that word? So it was like never really letting myself off the hook, like a constant drive to be right, to do it right, to be perfect. So that's one of probably many stories about sort of my dance with perfectionism over the years. And it's still there for me, for sure.
I was like point zero 0.01 away from being valedictorian.
Mm,
And I had worked hard, all of my schooling.
yeah,
I got a
clearly.
lot of accolades that I felt like, okay, this is, and when that didn't happen for me, I I remember feeling like I'm okay with it, but I don't know how everyone else is going to feel about it.
Mm,
And I felt like I'd let other people down, and that perfectionism really showed up in that moment that was supposed to be this great graduation moment and
mm.
moving on and to come up just that
But
short.
okay, so this is interesting because you weren't that upset about it.
I was more like, great, now I have to tell people this. Now people
Okay.
will know, and I didn't achieve
Yeah.
the this pinnacle that I was
Yeah.
moving toward.
Because it makes me wonder if perfectionism is as much for you as it was for other people's need of you.
It was. I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
A big part of it for me was being able to have others to perform for others and to
Yeah.
be able to feed their maybe perfectionism
Yeah.
for
Their
me.
need for you.
Mhm.
Well, one of the interesting components of perfectionism is that a classic perfectionist, when they actually do achieve something, so let's say, I mean, you were darn close to being valedictorian. Let's say you got it. A true perfectionist doesn't enjoy it. So when a true perfectionist, or sort of the way it's been defined, when they actually achieve what they're wanting, they actually can't allow themselves to bask in the glory or the joy of it. So that's kind of a mark of
Okay.
perfectionism. It's like their standards are so high that even when they achieve, they can't really fully take it in.
Mm. That's really
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when you're a perfectionist, you're just always on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You don't sit in any joy because you're constantly like,
Yeah.
what's the marker of success keeps moving. It's
Yes.
like, okay,
Yes.
what's next? Now I need to do
Well,
this.
because with perfectionism, it's not actually about achievement. It, it looks on the surface that it's about achievement, but it's actually managing anxiety
It's a
that's
coping.
underneath the
Yeah.
surface. And it's also, we could call it a protection strategy, that if I do everything right, if I get all the good grades, if I get every single word on my spelling test correct, I'll be safe.
Yeah. It's a safety mechanism.
Yeah. So we think it's about achievement, but it's actually, it goes deeper than
Mhm.
that.
And that's where that inner critic comes in saying, well, if you don't do this, you won't be safe. If this doesn't happen, if
Yeah.
the way that it should, then
Yeah.
yeah, that voices can get very loud.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's go to what Clarissa Pinkola Estés
Yeah.
says about it,
Let's hear it.
because Women Who Run with the Wolves, the book that really is the foundation of this podcast, she, of course, has something to say about perfectionism. So, Dr. Pinkola Estes writes that when culture narrowly defines what constitutes success or desirable perfection in anything, looks, height, strength, form, acquisitive power, economics, manliness, womanliness, good children, good behavior, religious belief, then Corresponding mandates to measure oneself against these criteria are interjected into the psyches of all the members of that culture.
Mm.
So, the issues of the exiled wildish woman are usually twofold: inner and personal, and outer and cultural. The perfectionism starts as an inner and personal issue, but it's also an outer and cultural issue as
Very
well.
reinforced by our culture.
Exactly. And the interesting part of all of this is that the rates of perfectionism started to increase significantly. If I remember correctly, I think it increased by 40%, which is a lot, in the years 2006, 2007. Researchers are trying to figure out what this was. The iPhone came out in 2007. So, what is showing up now is that across genders, people are having much higher self reports of perfectionism because so much of it is image.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the perfect image? Is it the perfect video? Am I getting the likes? And so we're seeing sort of a lot higher rate of perfectionism now than ever before. They call it a hidden epidemic now in this younger generation.
Yeah. And that age group is now about 18, right? So when you think about,
Yeah.
well, I think about my youngest being born in 2005. So he's grown up his whole life with the
Yeah.
iPhone.
Digital
And,
native.
and now being in college in his and he's 20, that comparison for him has been lifelong. He never
Doesn't
had,
know anything
like my
different.
other two kids had a period where that wasn't the case. But as soon as he had access, which, looking back was way too early because we were like,
Yeah.
we didn't know better. But yeah, it really is part of the culture is their entire life. It's like it enveloped them at such a young age. And they were comparing and having relationships differently with people than we ever did.
Yeah.
And so it makes you wonder at that age group if it's even higher because it's been their entire life.
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Marion Woodman, who's a well-known, she's passed now, but she was a Jungian analyst. She said that she thinks perfectionism a form of possession of an inner ideal. And Brené Brown, of course, has called it an addictive belief system, perfectionism. So there is something about sort of addiction, possession, and I think we're seeing that in terms of phone usage and in our children. Like it does become, you see the need for the right photo, the right angle, the right lighting, and they're all doing it.
Affirmation, being able
Yeah.
to, have that reinforced for them.
They're all doing it.
Yeah.
But we should say too, the reason that perfectionism, I did a Wisdom Wednesday on this recently. We'll put the link to that if you want more of the research side behind it. But the reason I started to get passionate about this, and we of course did an episode on this, I think it was episode 23, so 4 years ago. But the reason it was coming up for me again is I was watching my son, who's 20, similar to your son, with high levels of perfectionism, high ideals about everything, and then really hard on himself when he doesn't meet those standards. But I was also watching my mom, who is not at all addicted to it, iPhone. She half the time doesn't know where her iPhone is. But she also struggles with the house needing to be a certain way, things needing to be a certain way or look a certain way. And so both of them, the bookends of my life, right? My child and my parent, I sort of realized like, oh, I'm the link, I'm the bridge. What about my relationship to perfectionism? And so it's been a really interesting deep dive for me to kind of acknowledge, yep, I have these traits, some areas of my life much more than other areas of my life. And how do I want to manage them?
Yeah. And I think that's the crux of the conversation we want to have is that there's ways to work with it. It doesn't, we've always said, oh, we're recovering, we're moving away from it, we're letting it go. And now I think we're both rethinking that if it is in us, And it might be genetic. I know my mom too. When I think about, I laughed last night. She said, "Well, I hope my cleaning person can come tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, yes, I was there Sunday. Your house is really messy. Like there's not a thing out of
Yeah,
place."
of course.
But in her mind, it has to be
Yeah.
clean. And so I know, for our mothers being stay-at-home moms in the 70s and 80s, it was all about how everything appeared.
Yeah.
So there's just so much connected to this. It's not just one.
And by the way, that's
cause.
the most harmful form of perfectionism. So there's perfectionism that's connected to self. There's perfectionism, expectations for others. And then there's something called socially prescribed perfectionism. And that's when you're so worried about what other people think. You're so worried about what the neighbors would think if they come to the house and it's messy. That's the people-pleasing form of perfectionism. And that's the form of perfectionism most strongly connected to depression and anxiety and mental health problems. So, isn't that interesting?
It
that
is.
that belief that other people are
Watching.
and that I got to do everything I can to do it all perfectly, so they don't have any possible thing to say bad about me.
Yeah. And that can consume you, consume how you use your
Yeah.
energy and your time. And I was telling you that I've been thinking a lot about, women I work with who have ideas for things and that want to start a business or they want to start something new. They have an idea. And women, the feminine is creative, right? We have that such a strong urge. But I watch it, and I see it in myself, so I'm not judging, but how perfectionism can keep us from actually stepping toward that.
Yeah.
And how we say, well, once this is in place, then I will feel like I can tell the world I'm doing it. But I have to have this perfect website and the perfect headshots and the perfect things in place, pieces in place. And that's going to take me probably 6 to 8 months. And so we just continually kind of push that desire down the road. Or the urge to actually create. And so it feels to me like it's an opportune time for women to examine this for themselves because we need more women creating things. We need things built differently. We're in a huge transition and it's messy. And
we don't have time to procrastinate.
We do not. And I say that to myself. I'm saying that in my head right now. We don't have time.
Yeah.
And if we can support one another in not being perfectionists, right? Sometimes, remember when I said to you, we were like, "Oh, we can't record Friday or something," and I was like, "There's no podcast police."
Yeah.
Remember? And I was like, "It's okay. We
can make this up as we go along."
Yeah, but we've found ourselves with each other doing that, and so I think women can also say, "Hey, just go for it," support one another in endeavors and see when maybe perfectionism is holding one another back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I like your idea that we both have talked about being recovered perfectionists. And since learning more about perfectionism, I realized that you can be an adaptive perfectionist, which means that you're using your desire for a high ideal. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful parts about perfectionists is that they see the possibility. They see how good it could be. They get the vision of something really great. And so that in and of itself is powerful and can be a superpower for us. And then perfectionists always have a high measure of motivation and drive and ambition.
Right.
That's also can be a really beautiful trait if it's in check and it's not on hyperdrive, right?
Right. And that's where I think the high performers and perfectionism sometimes get combined. We think of them as the same thing. And I think you can be a high performer without being held back by perfectionism or
beating yourself up
beating
if
yourself.
it doesn't go the way you thought it should.
Yeah. And there are so many women, and I know we talk a lot about women, it's men too, that are high performers. It's just how loud is the inner critic and what's driving the high performance?
Yes.
Is it your desire, your vision, your ideals, your work ethic, or is it the inner critic that is trying to keep you safe?
Yeah. So, if we think about perfectionism as a whole, there are many traits of perfectionism that, again, are really beautiful. You see a high ideal, you have the drive and motivation to go for it, you're willing to work really hard. The pieces that are maladaptive is that if it doesn't go the way I saw it, then I'm angry at myself, I'm angry at others. I don't, I lose my self-confidence.
Mhm.
And so if we can again keep that piece in check or learn to manage and learn to let ourselves off the hook when things don't go well, then these other traits of perfectionism can actually be a real asset.
Right.
And
It's
if it is genetic and if it is sort of wired in us, those things are really hard to
yeah,
say, I'm going to kill off my perfectionism. I mean, really? Are we?
yeah. We have to
Maybe we
adapt.
can manage with it in a way for it to actually serve us.
Yeah. It's that idea of am I driving myself to do great work, or am I trying not to disappoint people?
Yeah.
And so thinking about what is driving you, is it the vision and the work, or is it the fear
Hmm.
of disappointing yourself or others? So
Well, so this goes back to Clarissa Pinkola Estés because she talks about that. She said this exiled wildish woman that they have to, when we look at perfectionism, we have to work with the inner and the personal, but we also have to understand the outer and the cultural. She says, and I think this is so similar to what you and I are also often talking about in here, is that we have to deal with the inner issues first. She writes that when we develop adequate strength, not perfect strength, but moderate strength in being oneself and finding what one belongs to, one can then influence the outer community and cultural consciousness in masterful ways.
again, it all starts within.
Yes, right. We have to work with our own self first. And once we develop moderate strength, then
Mhm.
we
We can
can impact the
influence.
culture. We can influence the culture. But if we're so sort of overwhelmed in our own soup
Yep.
and our own issues, it is really hard to actually be a part of the change that our culture really needs right now.
Exactly. We can't affect change outside of ourselves until we've done the work inside to really recognize. And I actually feel like the last 3, 4 years for me has been a lot of ahas, and it's a journey. I think about our course. It's not like you're going to get a rewilding certificate when this is over.
No, nor are you going to get like the 10-step plan
No.
to have a better life because I think that it's different for all of us. But you're going to learn how to start to listen deeper to your inner knowing. And I believe that that's the blueprint. That's going to take you where you need to go if you can learn to listen and quiet sort of the incessant
Voice.
critical voice that is
Mhm.
often there for us.
Which is how perfectionism is kind of all tied into that. So I think it'll be a really good exercise to do that in community. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about having that conversation
Yeah.
with other
Yeah,
women.
hearing other people's women struggle with perfectionism and how
Yeah.
do we work with it? And how do we put stuff out there that maybe doesn't feel as high level or as good or as beautiful as we think it could be, but we're going to put it out there. What do they
Yeah.
say? Better done
Done
than
than
perfect.
perfect.
There you go. The last piece that I love about what she writes in the book is that this idea of what is moderate strength.
Hmm.
And she said it's not that you don't have to be 100% confident. She thinks 75% confident will do nicely.
I know. And what that made me think of is this idea that when women apply for jobs, we think we have to have 100%
Mhm.
of the requirements. And men actually apply for things when they have about 50.
Yeah,
And they're more than confident to go into that interview with
yeah.
50. And that's an example of where we think our strength has to be at 100. We think the traits.
Well, because to get ahead in a patriarchal culture,
Yeah.
we feel like we have to be at 110% to
And I'm
make
not
it.
and I'm not suggesting sometimes that we don't.
That's not true. Yes.
But
Probably feeds into our perfectionism.
yeah, and I think whatever your role is, if you're an HR person or you're a hiring person, we all have a role we can play in helping see when somebody's 75% is amazing and enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we if we just wait, that's what I worry about. If we just wait for that magic where I meet all the requirements, then we don't step into it. We don't step into what's next because we're holding ourselves back.
Exactly.
So,
Okay, so I want everyone to envision a flower right now,
mhm.
a flower that's blooming. And if you think about it, a flower that's blooming, even if it's only half open or even 75% open, we still say that it's blooming. So this is the image that Dr. Estes gives us in the book is, we say a flower's blooming, whether it's even just half open. So I think this is beautiful advice for us to let ourselves off the hook and know that even giving 50 to 75% is often more than enough. So we would love to have you all join us. Perfectionism is just one small sliver of the many things we're going to talk about in terms of how you begin to rewild. And so, how do you know if this course is for you? Kate and I definitely felt like we've been on a 4-year rewilding journey, and we both came into this process of engaging with the wild woman in places where we were really doubting ourselves and we had a lot of confusion. So, if you feel disconnected from yourselves,
If you're navigating that burnout, transition, or grief, and you feel kind of stuck,
if you feel like you are a perfectionist, like we've been talking about, or that you're constantly needing to overperform in your family or your workplace,
and then if you're really just longing for this deep, authentic life, and to reconnect with yourself, and find more meaning in life, which I think a lot of us right now are looking for, we would love to have you.
and above all, I think what Kate and I have learned in this rewilding journey, I mean, there's been so many things, it's hard to even put in,
Mhm.
a short conversation here, is that when we sort of surrendered to the process of allowing sort of this more natural wild essence to reemerge in ourselves, the result has been a life that feels more true.
Mhm.
So I think truth is sort of at the heart of rewilding. It doesn't mean that you go crazy and you blow up your life, or
Right.
it's actually you just start to sink back into who you are. And then in that place, there is just a deep sense of truth. You're no longer living a lie. You're no longer pretending to be someone that you're not.
Yeah. And so much of this is learning to trust yourself again in your inner knowing,
Yeah.
because we all have our own answers to what we need and what's next. And it is in the quiet. And also, I think for women in the community where that starts to unfold,
Yeah.
because we were built to be in community.
Yeah. We're built to be in, conversation, and we're built to really heal in community too. So you get 4 classes with us, 90-minute classes. We're on live conversation, teachings, embodiment exercises. You get 8 yoga classes,
Yep.
and you get a
Rewilding box that will be some ritual for you to be able to receive in the mail and to create kind of that sense of community through the box. You'll see some beautiful collaborations we're doing with other women vendors and entrepreneurs. And we won't tell you everything. We want it to unfold, but the ritual box is a big piece of reconnecting to yourself.
And you can find out all the information for how to join in the show notes. It's dryogamama, momma.com/keep her wild.
So we would love to have you join us. There is a coupon that goes through Saturday, June 20th. So if you're listening to this and it's still in that time window, we would love to have you jump on and register. I think it's going to be a really great way to spend a summer month.
Yeah, the month of July.
Mhm.
By the way, the coupon code is rewild early.
Yep. So
All
join
right.
us.
Love to see you there. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.